These emotions that we are experiencing, it tells us that our emotions actually are the key to understanding how our not self theme is actually the path to living your life in alignment. In order to use your strategy and authority, I'm going to explain how understanding your not self theme is actually going to be helpful for you to understand why you're experiencing the not self theme, instead of feeling even more deeply into the feeling, truly breaking down the not self theme, as the not self theme is actually a signal to us that we are not living in alignment with our true nature. And I don't think it's good enough to just say, oh, your not self theme is you're not living in alignment with your true nature. It doesn't solve the problem. Just telling people, especially people that are new to human design and to discovering and getting into their own human design experiment, no matter what their type is outside of generator, it's not enough to just say, oh, your not self theme is you're not living in alignment, because yes, it gives us an explanation and perspective, but it doesn't help us. So I'm here to explain that your not self theme is actually part of your strategy to understanding where in your life you're being misaligned. Actually, your not self theme is a great way to understand how you're being misaligned or where you're being misaligned. And in order to understand that fully, we have to intricately break down the actual emotions, the actual feelings within the not self theme. And I'm going to look outside of human design also, in the sense I'm going to break down the emotions we're feeling, starting to understand like our emotions are actually a signal from our body of where we are misdirected in life, in our current situations. Understanding these emotions will help us understand what we are experiencing in our body. Fully understanding your not self theme, breaking the actual emotion that is connected with your not self theme, and to understand why you are actually feeling disappointment, anger, dissatisfaction. It's not enough, I feel, to just say, oh, you're misaligned, because we need a direction to put that emotion into. Also, outside of human design, it's helpful to understand that like in our types, a generator can also experience disappointment. So I think this is helpful even outside of human design to understand what our emotions and what our bodies are experiencing. And once we get into our bodies, then we're signaling to our authority that we're listening in, that we're paying attention, and then that will help you to understand fully how you need to shift into your aligned path. So our not self theme can help us understand exactly how we can shift, and in order to do that, we need to fully understand the actual emotions connected to the not self theme within human design. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to break down all the emotions, and I'm actually going to break down outside of human design. This is going to start with reflectors. So reflectors, not self theme is disappointment. This emotion stems from sadness. As a reflector, when you feel disappointment, it's when you feel your expectations for the desired outcome are dashed. It is telling you that you are being let down when something you thought you deserved didn't happen. It's unmet expectations, emotional experiences of loss. And something significant for you to know as a reflector with this not self theme. When you are experiencing disappointment, it's actually the body's alarm system that signals the need for recalibration and reconsideration of your current goals. So essentially, it is the feeling we feel when we feel a gap between expectation and reality. it is the feeling of that our expectations don't equal our reality, and there is a gap there. So as a reflector, knowing what disappointment, what that emotion is trying to communicate to you, you then know that when you are experiencing this not-self theme, that there are unmet expectations in your reality right now that are misaligning you to your true nature with your chart. So this can help you to understand that there needs to be a sense of recalibration, reconsideration of the goals of your reality and the expectations that you have, and that there's a gap between what you expect and what your actual reality is. With disappointment, this emotion is that you're not reaching your potential because it can be a signal that you're not in your environment, because often the reflector is oftentimes you're reflecting to others. You're basically a mirror to your environment. So if your expectations are not equaling your reality and you're feeling a disappointment in your life, it can be a signal to either change your expectation of your reality or change your reality to match your expectations. Like, are your expectations too high to where the people in your life, where your reality, your environment can't reach? And I'm not saying like lower your expectations, but this is what the sense of disappointment is signaling from our bodies. Our bodies are signaling us when we feel these emotions that our reality, our environment, even the people around us, they're not meeting our expectations of what we expect, what we feel we deserve. Actually, I wanted to quickly add on to this and say that as a reflector, you're here to essentially just reflect, to mirror. So if you're feeling your not self of disappointment, that means you're trying to put onto other people your own beliefs, your own systems. And that's not what you're meant to do as a reflector. You're essentially a mirror. You're here to just be present and be a mirror to others, and simply just reflect back other people's behaviors. And oftentimes this comes from them feeling triggers because they see themselves in you. But essentially you're there to just mirror the world onto the world. So if you're feeling disappointment, this means that you have these expectations that people are in an environment that they're going to reach this. From my understanding, that's not what the reflector is here for. You're here to essentially reflect, to mirror. You're a mirror. So if you have if you're having an expectations of a certain people, how they're gonna react, that's not what you're here for. Think of yourself as literally a mirror on the wall. So this isn't signaling, oh, you need to lower your expectations. It's actually might be signaling you might not be aligned with your environment. You might not be aligned with the people around you. Instead of being a mirror to others and a reflection to others of what they experience, there's a sense of you need to shift what your goals, what your expectations are when you go into an environment. And reflectors, it is even more important to have more alone time because you're constantly reflecting other people's shit, and there's a sense of like what you expect your environment, what you expect people to show up as when you go into an environment, you go into a presentation or you experience an experience, but then what you are imagining in your mind. So it's almost a disappointment comes from the dreamer, because we have this expectation of a relationship, of an environment, of how an experience, how it will be. So it's this dreamer state, it's this illusion, but then the reality doesn't match. So we feel this disappointment, and disappointment goes into sadness as well as dissatisfaction, because our expectations of what we want to achieve, of what we feel we deserve, expectations is an excitement. We're like, okay, this is where my bar is. But if your environment, your reality isn't matching your expectations, it can be a signal to reevaluate your sense of goals. It could be to reevaluate your expectations and to maybe lower them to like the people around you, because you're simply there to, so you could be disappointed with the people because they're not reaching your expectation, because you're simply a mirror. And if someone's in a lower capacity, in the sense of you could feel like you're constantly in the state of disappointment, this can help you to have a better idea of why you're feeling disappointment and how you can kind of shift to balance out the boundaries of between the gap of your expectations and your reality when you step into a new environment with people, situations. It can help you understand like, oh, this is why I'm feeling my not self theme. And also the not self theme can help you redirect where you need to be in your expectations of a situation, of people, grounding yourself that you are simply there to mirror to others what they are. You're simply there to be an information, reflection to what people are. We are experiencing disappointment. It is simply that our expectation of people, situation, environment is not in alignment with the reality. So now I'm going to talk about manifestors and your not self theme of anger. When you are experiencing anger, you're experiencing these emotions because your space has been invaded. Your freedom has been squashed. Your pride may be injured, or the way you see the world has been invalidated. Or if your feelings have been ignored, this can be the case of feeling angry. And anger also tells you when one of your fundamental needs has gone unmet or isn't being met by yourself, or it isn't being mirrored in your environment or the people around you. Your needs are being unmet, they're invalidated, you feel invalidated, you're being ignored, or your needs are being ignored or being completely just squashed and you're being disregarded. So we're angry because we're not being validated, but actually our anger tells us where we are being unmet, where certain people are continuously invalidating our experience, our way of seeing the world, our way of seeing ourselves, our way of expressing ourselves authentically. So oftentimes that's the inner child that's coming out, and it's getting pissed off because it's being consistently, continuously disregarded as a human being that needs its experiences and its viewpoints validated. Those opinions that you have are, at the core, we feel anger because we are not being validated as our experience, our thoughts, our feelings aren't being they're being invalidated. Notice when you're feeling angry, or if you're feeling angry by certain people, oftentimes it comes because these certain situations are triggering that core part of you that isn't able to express itself authentically. Feeling angry because you're not able to express yourself authentically to them because they're constantly gaslighting you and invalidating your experience. Anger is an authentic emotion where anger is telling you my needs are being unmet, I'm being invalidated, I'm not being heard. Anger comes out when you're not being heard, when you're being ignored, or you're just being completely, your core self is being completely squashed. That is not your path. Those are not your people. That is not your environment. That's not where you need to be. With anger, this emotion makes it clear to us who we are, because it is the one emotion that's seen as ugly, that's like dirty, that's evil. We see people that have public tantrums are as bad, seen as erratic. There is a human experience, and it's one of the most powerful emotions because anger also can be a motivator in within passion. So passion and power coincides with anger. But this emotion makes it very clear, again, who we are, our core self, when our core self is being invalidated, not seen. So this can come from your environment as well as yourself, where you're not validating yourself, you're not showing up for yourself, for your core self, and you're kind of trying to be someone you're not. And that's where the not self theme comes within human design, where you're trying to be someone you're not, and you're kind of a wolf wearing a sheep's clothes, or a sheep wearing a wolf's clothes. That's the not self theme. So this emotion can actually alert us if we have been wronged in some way, mistreatment, or just completely diminished. This emotion also makes it very clear that the boundaries or our needs that are not being asserted or invalidated or just completely ignored are happening in the expense of oneself. So this is what the emotion is signaling: to redirect and get back to yourself. One thing to remember is that by abandoning your anger or being too afraid to express it, you are actually in fact abandoning or hurting yourself. So the projector, your not self theme is bitterness. So the emotion of bitterness is characterized by the feelings of anger, resentment, and hostility. So you can see that when we break down the not self themes, oftentimes they actually start intertwining and connecting, because bitterness actually it's the matured emotion from anger. From the manifestor's not self theme of anger, it is matured into bitterness, which is the projector's not self theme. You also have the underlying tone of the not self theme of the manifestor, which is anger. But when we experience this emotion, we often are feeling we have been wronged or taken advantage of in some way. Bitterness is expressed in our bodies because we are having a hard time with a life change or a failing. This is hiding in the fear of a life change, or bitterness is the emotion of anger matured. Like I was saying earlier, it is resentment. It is losing trust and faith in others and yourself, your surroundings, and environment. Bitterness is simply hurt. So if we stay in the state of bitterness, this emotion interferes with cultivating healthy and satisfying relationships. And leads you to doubt, disparage connections to others. It also robs you of vital energy to help you realize your desires or achieve your goals. This feeling impacts your personal search for purpose and meaning in life. Bitterness is a consequence of accumulated anger and sadness as a result of past experiences. When you're feeling this not self theme, it's important to not stay and let this theme or this emotion brew. It's important to see the not self theme as an indicator that where you are currently in life, wherever that is, it could just simply be certain people or in an environment that's not aligned with your core self. And so the bitterness comes in, and it's important that we see the not self theme as to redirect ourselves. It's a sign that where you are currently isn't aligned with your higher purpose or with your human design. Important to see this as an indicator that if there's a sense of bitterness, to look into what is kind of causing that, kind of triggering you. And it's important to understand fully what that signifies for you, because you really don't want to stay in that energy and that emotion. Because once we are able to see our not self, once we are able to see what doesn't ignite us, what doesn't excite us, then what will happen is that then opportunities will come to you, people will come to you to invite you to environments or experiences which you will be ignited, which you will be called to be invited to certain things and events. But first you have to give your not self a space to be seen, and in order to do that we have to look at the emotions and what those emotions are communicating to us within our bodies, because then once we do that, it can pave the way of where we are supposed to be. Okay, so generators are dissatisfaction or unsatisfaction. Well, actually generators not self theme is frustration, but it can also come into dissatisfaction. So the emotion of dissatisfaction is that it is a manifestation of being really angry, like you're carrying raw and glowing embers of rage under your surface. This is something that might need forgiving somewhere, something that feels unfair or outrageous, and you're mentally pacing your insides looking for a change. So when we're dissatisfied with our current environment, people, wherever we are, this is our inner compass looking for a change. Automatically we're looking for a shift. We're not satisfied with what they are, so it might actually feel like you're wanting to, like, you're like crawling under your skin, like where it's just the sense of just like wanting to like peel out of my suit but it just feels like there's like something crawling inside my skin. That's the ugly kind of feeling I get, where it's just this, like, it's under your surface. This is your body's signal that your needs, desires, and expectations are not being met. It is a feeling of disappointment, frustration, and discontent that people experience when they feel they have failed to achieve their goals or obtain what they desire. It is restlessness, and your current path is not satisfying you because you are not content with it. It is a situation or event in your surroundings that is causing you to feel as if something is wrong. So that is automatically your core compass as a generator letting you know this isn't where you're supposed to be. Your current path isn't satisfying you, so there's a sense of frustration, dissatisfaction, misalignment. But something to know when you are a generator in regards to your not self theme is that when you are satisfied, so that you know, knowing the opposite of your not self theme then knows you when you are aligned. So when you are satisfied, you are content with your surroundings and situations. Something to know is that even when you feel dissatisfied, it's not an indicator that something is wrong, but it is your internal compass letting you know that it is not aligned with whatever you are not aligned with whatever you are experiencing. Like literally your sacral authority is not aligned, it's not ignited, and the more you stay in that situation, the more drained you're going to be, to the point where your sacral is just completely going to shut down. This feeling of dissatisfaction, it doesn't fulfill your main purpose to be content. In short, dissatisfaction means you don't want it. You dislike the thing or condition, the feeling, but satisfaction means you like the thing, you want it or desire more, it makes you feel good and you love it. Dissatisfaction also outside of human design is an indicator that the thing you're pursuing isn't aligned with your current path, with your internal self, with your core self's purpose for what it wants to achieve. So this is also in alignment with having your expectations isn't aligning with your reality, so there's this like sense of dissatisfaction. But other emotions that I want to discuss outside of not self themes is tiredness. So when we are feeling tired, we're feeling a lack of proper rest, which is self-explanatory, I think. So if you do not get 7 to 8 hours of sleep, definitely expect to be tired, fatigued. Another reason for this is feeling you're doing too much, For example, working or playing hard without rest properly. It also indicates poor sleep habits or lack of exercise. Okay, so furthermore, I wanted to discuss frustration, because while dissatisfaction incorporates anger and frustration, ultimately the generator's not self theme is frustration. So frustration is something to know, is that frustration is a common emotional response to opposition related to anger, annoyance, and disappointment. And frustration, like I've said earlier, frustration, this is something that we experience as human beings ultimately. And so even outside of human design, you can look at these emotions as when we're frustrated with something that's already not aligned with our path, with our core self, with our values, with our needs. And of course, like reflectors, they experience frustration, because at the core, frustration is often the not self, a very common not self theme and signal from our bodies that the thing we are experiencing, and then of course, like frustration comes to us in the everyday life. And it doesn't mean that just because we're feeling frustration, that means we don't do that thing. Because even if an individual is living their design to the best, where they're correctly using their strategy and authority, it doesn't matter, because the thing about human design is that even in the everyday, even if you are living your design, you will still experience some conflicts in life, because if you didn't, life would be boring. And the whole point of being a human being and experiencing life is that we learn and we delve and we shift. So it's important to know that even if when individuals are following their strategy and authority and they are living their design, that doesn't mean your life is going to be easy peasy, lemon gone squeezy. Because the point of conflict is that within psychology is that conflict and opposition, it grows us as individuals, and it teaches us about ourselves. Frustration arises from the perceived resistance to the fulfillment of an individual's will or goal, and is likely to increase when a will or goal is denied or blocked. Within frustration, it builds up as long as we deny ourselves fulfillment, satisfaction in this life. It's going to get to a point where there's going to be a breaking point. Of course, we all feel natural frustration in life, such as unexpected events happening or things coming up randomly, and there's this sense of like frustration. But when frustration becomes a problem is when these frustrations keep coming up to a point that you keep denying them, and when you're not adhering to them, you will develop unhealthy coping mechanisms or even mental health issues. For example, a common symptom for frustration is anxiety disorder. But when we don't give this emotion recognition and a space to be seen, it will mature to anger and having a tantrum or outburst due to misalignment, or just simply our needs are not being met from ourselves or outside of us, or we as individuals are being ignored completely. Generators really have to be careful that they are not using their not self theme of frustration as a replacement to their sacral. And you will know you are working with a generator who is living their not self theme of frustration, because they're literally powering through a workday by using their frustration, and they are groaning, huffing and puffing throughout the whole day whenever they have to do anything, a task, and just they're ignoring their bodies so much consistently to the point that they will make it everyone's problem. And they're using their not self theme as a motor to get through the day. So they're essentially using their not self theme as a replacement to their authority. You have to be careful with frustration, even if you are not a generator, because frustration can lead to anger, and often frustration actually, when it's consistently built up and that energy is built up, you can see it with outbursts, you can see it with tantrums. That frustration builds up to having outbursts and being angry.